What have Digital Extremes created? Honestly, I don't know what year it is. If someone told me at the start of this year that Hydroid was going to be an amazing Warframe...
Oh, really? No?
I just wouldn't have believed you. But here we are. This is the situation we find ourselves in. Do you celebrate when the frame that you've hated the most becomes the one that you've really been enjoying playing? 9 years of dunking on this guy, 9 years of my community trolling me and poking fun, leveling 101 of them because Digital Extremes felt it was funny to gift them to me, and then DE goes and finally turns him, can't even fucking talk, turns him into an armor stripping, hard to kill, enemy melting powerhouse. I'm genuinely conflicted, but it is true, Hydroid is now a corrosive beast. You know a rework is really good when you sit down and you look at all of their new reworked abilities and you can't fully decide which one you want to subsume out, if any. And for me it was his Tidal Surge, but that's not saying it's a bad ability because it's really not. It's a really good mobility ability and a grouping ability now. It doesn't ragdoll enemies across the room, it just dumps them in a nice little group for you to deal with. But after playing him for several hours yesterday and really enjoying him, then Laser Gaming Views jumped into my stream and told me to try Breach Surge on him with his Tempest Barrage, and it is genuinely hard to go back to, so a huge shout out to Laser Gaming Views for that one, because I was kind of just settled on using Nourish, which is really good on him as well. I think it's amazing having that viral along with his new corrosive abilities, but Breach Surge just works really well on large groups of enemies, especially in Steel Path, and it just adds that blind crowd control and heavier hits as well. So this rework has set the bar. That's it. This is the pinnacle. He's tanky, he deals a lot of damage, and he's a lot of fun to play with. His puddle is now gone, thank feck. So Digital Extremes, please do something similar with Inros and a few of the other Warframes that have no real synergy between some of their abilities, because Hydroid's rework now is probably one of the best that we've had in game. The idea behind Hydroid's rework, of course, was to retain his ocean pirate theme, while also making him easier to use and bringing his powers or his damage up in line with some of our other Warframes, and they've definitely nailed that aspect of it. Honestly, the new team at DE have been absolutely nailing these updates. So the rework removed the charger mechanics from Tempest Barrage and Tentacle Swarm. Now they automatically have the damage and the effects of a fully charged ability with a simple cast, making Hydroid's gameplay more fluid and definitely more straightforward. Hydroid's Tempest Barrage and Tidal Surge abilities now also no longer deal impact. Instead, they deal corrosive damage capable of applying stacks of corrosive, but also making enemies more susceptible to additional damage as well. This change brings his Corroding Barrage Augment mod into his base abilities, with Corroding Barrage now changing to Viral Tempest. So the augments have a different name and kind of act differently. So if you equip Viral Tempest, then your ability will still be dealing corrosive damage, but on top of that, it's going to be also dealing viral, so 2 status types, so it's definitely worth equipping. Now his new passive will trigger once Hydroid damages an enemy, and it will last until that enemy is dead. The first instance of corrosive status on an enemy will remove 50% of their armor instead of what would have been 26. This change means corrosive status can now achieve 100% armor reduction with full stacks, but Hydroid doesn't need to apply all of those corrosive effects. As long as he damages that enemy, then any corrosive effects that are applied after that will ramp those corrosive stacks up, whether it's weapons or other Warframes abilities in your group and so on. Now Tempest Barrage will now cause enemies to stagger instead of what would have been the old ragdoll, making it easier to target enemies with your guns and kill them. His Tidal Surge ability can now be steered in any direction. Instead of yeeting enemies across the map, you can dump them in a nice little group on the ground, and like I said, you can steer into groups of enemies to gather as many of them up as possible. Now Tidal Surge will also apply corrosive status effects to enemies, and the amount of stacks that you put on those enemies will be determined by how far that you carry them in that Tidal Surge wave. Longer distance means more stacks of corrosive. Now another improvement to Tidal Surge is that it will cleanse all negative status effects from Hydroid, so they've implemented the augment into the actual ability. Now his puddle is replaced by the new Plunder ability, which will remove armor from all enemies in a frontal cone in front of Hydroid depending on the range you have on your build. Increases Hydroid's armor depending on how many enemies you hit, how much your power strength is, but also it will grant corrosive damage bonus to your weapons as well. Now the effectiveness of Plunder will also be stronger based on the number of corrosive status effects that are applied to those enemies that get hit by it. So you could prime enemies up if you wanted to with a weapon. I've seen players talking about using the Ignis, to prime them, and then casting Plunder in order to max out the amount of stacks that you have faster, basically with one hit. Now, Tentacle Swarm is an instant cast, like I said, and will hold enemies more steadily. They don't flail all around the place. They're not getting beaten from wall to wall, making it much easier to target them with your guns. So it pains me to say it that Hydroid is in a really, really good place right now. And while playing with him yesterday and having those full stacks of that plunder of the armor on your Hydroid, you realize just how tanky he is. And having Death Cube giving me a constant supply of health orbs, which were, I guess, ramping up my arcane blessing and allowing me to have nearly 2000 health, but also giving me constant supply of energy orbs, meaning that I didn't really have any issues with energy, also because of arcane energize. And just having a Warframe that can, I guess, cast abilities nearly as much as Dagath, especially by using the Tempest Barrage all of the time, and then combining that with Breach Surge, which was, I guess, double dipping in different damage types, and then also having Tentacles to shut it down as a bit of a kind of a choke point with certain areas, was just really, really nice synergy. Like I said, his Tidal Surge ability to wave is really good. It can pick up large groups of enemies. It will dump them wherever the hell you want, and they will be, I guess, incapacitated for about 2 seconds while they're climbing back up off the ground, allowing you to wipe them out with one simple cast of Tempest Barrage, or with Breach Surge, or with your weapons, or with Tentacles. I mean, I'm kind of struggling to think of a Warframe that had a rework as good as this. I guess Grendel's rework was really bloody good, but this definitely for me has set the bar, considering what the community has thought of Hydroid over the last few years. He has been the kind of the beaten Warframe, right? Every one of us, or most of the people in the community, seen him as the worst Warframe around, whereas now he's definitely right up there with some of the best in the game. But this is the build that I ran with for the footage yesterday on stream, except I had got Arcane Blessing on instead of Molt Augmented, and I do want to put Brief Respite in there and an Umbral Forma on my Hydroid, which is really, really, really painful to say. Feck. Put an Umbral Form on Hydroid, Jesus, it feels like it's a dare. It feels like DE has said, if you don't put an Umbral Form on him, we're going to gift you another 101 Hydroid, so I kind of feel like your feet are being held over the fire, but he is really bloody good. But yeah, build your Hydroid or mod your Hydroid however you want to fit your playstyle. Your frame, your game, go absolutely nuts. Have fun with them, right? Have a great day, have a great week, and as always, thanks very much for watching.
Don't call me mean, I just want someone to love me, someone to lick my wounds and kiss my aching body. My desperation knows no termination.